Sub-Commander Krelvok stared at the casualty reports on his display screen. In just 12 hours of combat, his squadron had lost 8 cadets killed and 23 wounded. This was supposed to be a training exercise, not a real war. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving urgent requests for medical evacuation from 3 ground teams." Krelvok felt his stomach tighten. Medical evacuation was not part of the exercise plan. The humans were supposed to be challenging, but not deadly. Something was going very wrong. "What are the ground commanders reporting?" he asked. "They say the humans are not following expected combat patterns. They attack from underground, from above, from directions that make no tactical sense. They use weapons that should not be effective against our armor." Krelvok opened a communication channel to his training supervisors. This is Krelvok requesting guidance. The human resistance is beyond simulation parameters. The response came back immediately. "Adapt and overcome, Sub-Commander. This is exactly the kind of challenge our cadets need to face. Learn from the experience." But learning was exactly what the humans were doing too. Jake Morrison had spent the night studying pieces of alien equipment that his team had recovered from the battle site. The metal was unlike anything he had ever seen, but it had weaknesses. "Look at this," he said to Tony Rodriguez, pointing to a damaged section of alien armor. "The metal is incredibly strong, but it's designed to stop energy weapons. Physical impact damages it differently." Tony examined the armor with a magnifying glass. "You're right. These dents were made by regular bullets. Their shields might stop lasers, but they're not as good against old-fashioned lead." Amy Wells had been monitoring alien communications all night. She had discovered that the aliens were using a complex encryption system, but like all encryption, it had patterns. "I'm starting to understand their language," she told Jake. "They keep using the same words: exercise, training, practice." "What do you think it means?" Jake asked. "I think we're not the only ones learning here," Amy replied. "I think this might be some kind of test for them too." Dr. Lisa Parker had reached the same conclusion. Working with scientists around the world, she had analyzed the alien energy signatures and found something disturbing. The weapons being used against Earth were not designed for conquest. They were designed for training. "The energy levels are all wrong," she explained to the Emergency Science Committee. "If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it in minutes. Instead, they're using weapons that are just powerful enough to be challenging." Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka from Tokyo joined the video call. "We've observed the same patterns here. Aliens landed at our military bases, but they ignored our cities. They attacked our communication centers, but they left our hospitals alone." Dr. Klaus Weber from Berlin added his findings. "Our analysis shows that their shields are incredibly sophisticated. They can deflect most energy weapons completely, but they seem to have trouble with multiple simultaneous impacts from kinetic weapons." "Kinetic weapons?" Lisa asked. "Bullets, missiles, anything that hits them physically rather than with energy. It's like they've never faced that kind of attack before." The information was passed to military commanders around the world. General Patricia Hayes received the report while she was planning the next phase of resistance operations. The aliens were strong, but they had weaknesses that could be exploited. "Get me every sniper we have," she told her staff. "And I want every available rifle, machine gun, and rocket launcher. If these aliens are weak against kinetic weapons, we're going to give them more kinetic weapons than they can handle." The message went out to military units worldwide. Use conventional weapons, concentrate fire, attack from multiple directions. The aliens might have superior technology, but they were not invincible. Bobby Chun received the new orders while he was leading a Marine squad through the ruins of downtown San Diego. The former Marine had been fighting aliens for 18 hours straight, and he was beginning to understand their tactics. "They're good soldiers," he told his men, "but they fight like they're in a training exercise. They follow rules. They expect us to follow rules too. What kind of rules? Asked Corporal Martinez. They don't target civilians. They don't destroy infrastructure unless it's military. They use minimum force. It's like they're trying to win without really hurting us. Bobby had an idea. If the aliens were following rules, maybe those rules could be used against them. Listen up. We're going to try something new. Meanwhile, Kate Thompson was working in a CIA facility outside Washington, D.C., trying to decode alien communications. The former analyst had been studying their language patterns for 3 days straight, and she was starting to make progress. They have a very structured communication system, she explained to her supervisor. Everything is reported up a chain of command. But the interesting thing is what they're reporting. What do you mean? They're asking for permission to use stronger weapons. And they're being told no. Someone is limiting what they can do to us. The supervisor leaned forward. Are you saying this isn't a full invasion? I'm saying I think we're part of their training program. They're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to learn from us. The revelation was passed up the chain of command, eventually reaching the president himself. If the aliens were treating Earth as a training ground, then humanity's response needed to be calculated carefully. Too little resistance, and the aliens would get bored. Too much, and they might escalate to real weapons. Back at MIT, Dr. Lisa Parker was working on a different problem. She had been analyzing the alien ship's energy signatures, looking for ways to disrupt their technology. What she found was both encouraging and terrifying. Their technology is incredibly advanced, she told her research team. But it's also incredibly specialized. They've designed everything to fight other high-tech civilizations. They're not prepared for low-tech solutions. Her assistant, a graduate student named Dan Miller, looked up from his computer. What do you mean? Think about it. If you were designing shields to fight other spaceships, what would you defend against? Energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams. You wouldn't worry about bullets and explosives. Dan understood immediately. So their defenses are optimized for the wrong kind of fight. Exactly. And that gives us an advantage. We can hit them with things they're not designed to handle. The information was shared with military engineers around the world. Within hours, factories were retooling to produce more conventional weapons. If the aliens were weak against kinetic attacks, then humanity would give them kinetic attacks. Sam Davis was one of the engineers working on the problem. He had been studying captured alien weapons, trying to understand how they worked. What he found was both impressive and puzzling. These weapons are incredibly sophisticated, he told his team, but they're also incredibly complex. Every component is designed to work with every other component. If you damage one part, the whole system fails. That sounds like a weakness, his assistant said. It is. Our weapons are designed to be simple and reliable. If one part breaks, the rest still works. But their weapons are all-or-nothing systems. Sam began designing countermeasures. Simple devices that could disrupt alien electronics. Crude, but effective weapons that could penetrate their armor. The goal was not to match their technology, but to exploit its weaknesses. Colonel Frank Adams was putting these new ideas into practice. He had been tasked with defending Washington, D.C. against an expected alien assault. But instead of waiting for them to attack, he was going to bring the fight to them. We know they have a command ship orbiting above the city, he told his officers. We know they're using it to coordinate ground operations. And we know their shields are weaker against multiple simultaneous impacts. His plan was simple. Launch every missile the military had in the area at the same time. The aliens might be able to stop 1 or 2 missiles, but they could not stop 50. What if it doesn't work? Asked Major Rivera. Then we try something else. But the one thing we don't do is give up. The attack was scheduled for dawn. Every available launcher was moved into position. Patriot missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, even old-fashioned rockets left over from previous wars. If the aliens wanted a fight, they were going to get one. Krelvak watched the human preparations through his ship's sensors. The humans were moving equipment and personnel with obvious purpose. They were planning something big. Should we attack first? His tactical officer asked. No, our orders are to respond to human aggression, not initiate it, but prepare all defensive systems. I think we're about to learn what humans are really capable of. The sun was rising over Washington, D.C. when the first missile launched. Then, another. Then 10 more. Within seconds, the sky was filled with streaking projectiles, all heading toward the alien command ship. Krelvok's shields absorbed the first impacts easily. But there were more missiles coming. Many more. His defensive systems were being overwhelmed by the sheer number of attacks. Sir, shield generators are overloading, his engineer reported. All power to shields, Krelvok ordered. But it was too late. The accumulated damage was too much. The shields failed. The remaining missiles struck the ship's hull directly. Explosions rocked the command deck. Warning lights flashed as systems failed throughout. The first alien ships appeared over Los Angeles at exactly 6:47 a.m. Pacific Time. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished metal in the morning sun. Each ship was the size of a football stadium, silent as they descended. Through the clouds, Jake Morrison watched from his rooftop, positioned as the lead ship positioned itself directly above the city center. Blue energy beams shot down from its belly, striking the major communication towers and power stations. The beams were bright, but did not seem to destroy anything. Instead, the equipment simply stopped working. Non-lethal suppression beams. Jake muttered to himself. They're trying to disable us, not kill us. His radio crackled to life. Jake, this is Amy. The whole electromagnetic spectrum just went crazy. Every frequency is being jammed. Tony, what's your status? Jake asked. Still. Here, boss. But my rifle scope is dead. Electronic sights are down. Going to iron sights. Jake had expected this. In his military career, he had learned that the first rule of combat was to assume your fancy equipment would break. That was why his team always carried backup systems. Old-fashioned radios, mechanical watches, simple weapons that did not need computers to work. Sub-Commander Krelvok stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the tactical display. The human city below had gone dark within minutes. Communication. Networks were down. Power grids were offline. Traffic control systems had failed. Everything was going according to plan. Phase 1 complete, he announced to his squadron. Beginning Phase 2. Target military installations. The 12 ships, spread out across the continent. Each one carried 25 cadets, all eager to prove themselves in their first real combat experience. They had trained for years in simulations, but this was different. This was real. 3 ships moved toward the naval base in San Diego. 2 headed for the Air Force Base in Colorado. The rest scattered to Army installations across the country. Their mission was simple: land, secure the base, capture or neutralize any resistance. What they did not know was that every military base in America had been built with one assumption in mind. Someday, someone would try to attack them. Maybe it would be another country. Maybe it would be terrorists. Maybe it would be something else entirely. At Edwards Air Force Base, Colonel Steve Martinez was already in the command bunker when the alien ships appeared on radar. The bunker had been designed to survive nuclear war. It was buried 3 stories underground, with its own power supply and communication systems. All units, this is Eagle Base, Martinez spoke into his radio. We are now under attack by unknown aircraft. Repeat, we are under attack. This is not a drill. The response was immediate. Fighter jets began launching from bases across the country. They used runways that had been designed to operate without central control. Pilots relied on training that had been drilled into them since day one. If the fancy systems fail, fall back on the basics. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks was in the cockpit of his F-35 when the first alien ship appeared over Los Angeles. He had been flying combat missions for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for this sight. The alien vessel was massive, easily 10 times larger than any aircraft he had ever seen. "Control, this is Hawk 1, Ryan radioed. "I have visual on the bogey. It's huge. Hawk 1, you are clear to engage." Weapons free. Ryan armed his missiles and locked onto the alien ship. The targeting system struggled to get a solid lock. The alien vessel seemed to blur at the edges, as if it was not quite there. But Ryan had been trained to fire without computer assistance if necessary. He pulled the trigger. 2 missiles streaked toward the alien ship, leaving white trails in the sky. They struck the vessel's hull and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. When the smoke cleared, the alien ship was still there, apparently undamaged. "Direct hit, no effect," Ryan reported. Beginning gun run. Aboard the alien ship, Krelvok felt the impacts. His shields had absorbed the explosions easily, but he was impressed. The human pilot had reacted faster than the simulations predicted. The missiles had been fired with precision and skill. "Interesting," Krelvok said to his tactical officer. "They adapt quickly to new situations." Down in Los Angeles, Jake Morrison was adapting too. He had moved his team to a new position, using the storm drains beneath the city. The tunnels were old but well-maintained, and they provided cover from the alien sensors. "Amy, can you get any communication through?" he asked. "I'm trying shortwave radio," she replied. "The aliens are jamming modern frequencies, but they might not know about older technology." Amy was right. Her vintage radio equipment began picking up signals from around the world. Military units were reporting similar attacks in London, Tokyo, Berlin, and Moscow. But they were also reporting something else. The aliens seemed to be holding back. "They're not trying to kill us," Jake realized. "This is some kind of test." Dr. Lisa Parker had reached the same conclusion. She was in the MIT Emergency Operations Center, working with a team of scientists to analyze the alien energy signatures. The quantum disruption patterns were incredibly sophisticated, but they were also carefully controlled. "They could have destroyed our entire electrical grid," she explained to the military liaison. "Instead, they're just disrupting specific systems. It's like they want us to fight back. Why would they want that?" The officer asked. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." The first alien landing occurred at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. 3 ships descended onto the main parade ground, their landing gear extending like giant spider legs. Hatches opened on the sides, and alien soldiers began emerging. General Patricia Hayes watched the landing through a periscope from the underground command center. The alien soldiers were tall and thin, wearing armor that seemed to flow like liquid. Metal, they moved with obvious discipline, spreading out in tactical formations. "They know what they're doing," she told her staff. "This isn't some random attack. These are trained soldiers." But Patricia had trained soldiers too. As the aliens advanced toward the main buildings, they encountered something they had not expected. The buildings were empty. Every human on the base had already moved to defensive positions that had been prepared years ago. The first shot came from a sniper position in a water tower half a mile away. The bullet struck the lead alien in the chest, and he staggered backward. His armor had absorbed most of the impact, but he was clearly hurt. "Contact!" The alien commander shouted in his own language, taking fire from long range. The Zephyrian cadets had never experienced sniper fire before. In their training simulations, enemy forces always attacked in organized formations. They had never faced an opponent who would hide and shoot from concealment. More shots rang out from different positions. The alien soldiers began taking cover behind their ships, but they were exposed on the open parade ground. Human soldiers had spent decades learning how to fight in exactly this situation. Tony Rodriguez was one of those soldiers. He had positioned himself in a maintenance shed near the base perimeter, with a clear view of the landing zone. His rifle was an old M14, chosen specifically because it had no electronic components to fail. "Come on, he whispered to himself, lining up his shot. "Let's see how tough you really are." The bullet struck an alien soldier in the shoulder, spinning him around. The armor protected him from serious injury, but the impact was enough to knock him down. Tony worked the bolt and fired again, this time hitting the same alien in the leg. The alien cadets were beginning to panic. This was not how the exercise was supposed to go. According to their briefings, humans were supposed to form defensive lines and fight conventionally. They were not supposed to hide and shoot from unexpected directions. Krelvok received the first casualty reports within an hour of landing. 3 cadets wounded, 1 seriously. The humans were not fighting fair. They were using every advantage they could find, from hidden positions to weapons that seemed designed specifically to penetrate Zephyrian armor. "Request permission to use enhanced suppression fields," Krelvok radioed to his command ship. "Negative," came the reply. "This is a training exercise. Adapt and overcome." But adaptation was exactly what the humans were doing. In bases around the world, military commanders were sharing information about alien weaknesses. The armor could be penetrated by high-velocity bullets. The ship's shields were less effective against multiple simultaneous attacks. The aliens seemed confused by unconventional tactics. Jake Morrison's team had joined up with a group of National Guard soldiers who had been training in urban warfare. Together, they planned an attack on one of the alien ships that had landed in downtown Los Angeles. "Remember," Jake told the group, "they expect us to fight like we fight each other. Organized lines, conventional tactics. We're going to give them something they haven't seen before." The attack came at midnight. Instead of a frontal assault, the humans struck from sewers, rooftops, and underground parking garages. They used Molotov cocktails and improvised explosives. They hit the alien ship from 6 different directions at once. The alien cadets had never faced anything like it. Their training had not prepared them for enemies who would attack from below ground or drop explosives from above. Within minutes, the ship's exterior was damaged and 2 more cadets were wounded. Krelvok was beginning to have. Commander Vextel stood before the massive viewing screen in the high assembly chamber. The blue and green planet slowly rotated below them, its white clouds swirling across the continents. Earth looked peaceful from space. Almost too peaceful for what he had in mind. "Members of the High Council," Vextel began, his voice echoing through the crystal dome, "I present to you the perfect training ground for our military academy." The 12 council members leaned forward in their floating seats. Each one represented a different world in the Zephyrian Empire. They had conquered dozens of planets over the centuries, but always with overwhelming force. Their young officers needed real combat experience, not just simulations. "This species calls themselves humans," Vextel continued. "They show promise in warfare, but lack advanced technology. Our cadets will face genuine resistance without serious danger to themselves." Council leader Zarthik raised one of his 4 arms. "What makes you believe they are suitable opponents, Commander?" Vextel touched the control pad. The screen changed to show human soldiers in various conflicts. They fight constantly among themselves. Wars, conflicts, training exercises. They seem to enjoy combat, but their weapons are primitive. Chemical, explosives, metal projectiles, basic energy sources. The footage showed tanks rolling across deserts, aircraft streaking through skies, and soldiers moving through urban environments. The humans moved with purpose, but their equipment looked crude compared to Zephyrian technology. "Their response patterns are predictable," Vextel added. "They organize into hierarchical military structures. They follow orders. They use conventional tactics. Perfect for our cadets to practice against." Meanwhile, 30,000 miles below, Captain Jake Morrison felt sweat dripping down his face as he adjusted his binoculars. The former Navy SEAL was crouched on a rooftop in downtown Los Angeles, watching the sky. Something was wrong. The air itself seemed to shimmer in places, like heat waves on a hot day, but the temperature was only 70 degrees. "Tony, you seeing this?" Jake whispered into his radio. Tony Rodriguez, his weapons expert, was positioned 2 blocks away. "Yeah, boss. Been watching it for an hour. It's not weather." Jake had started his private security company after leaving the military. Most of their work involved protecting corporate executives and government officials. But this morning, every client had called with the same concern: strange lights in the sky, electrical interference, animals acting nervous. "Amy, what's your equipment showing?" Jake asked. Amy Wells was their communications specialist. She sat in a van parked 3 streets away, surrounded by electronic monitoring gear. "Radio frequencies are going crazy, Jake. I'm picking up patterns that don't match any known technology." Jake lowered his binoculars and rubbed his eyes. 20 years of military service had taught him to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were screaming that something bad was coming. Back on the Zephyrian command ship, Subcommander Krelvok reviewed his mission briefing. At only 43 years old, he was young for a Zephyrian officer. This would be his final test before graduation from the military academy. Success here would guarantee him a position in the Imperial fleet. "Remember," his instructor had told him, "this is a learning exercise. The humans are not your enemy. They are your teachers. They will show you what real combat feels like without the danger of facing an advanced civilization." Krelvok looked at the tactical display. His unit consisted of 12 ships and 300 cadets. They would attack major human military installations simultaneously, using non-lethal suppression weapons. The humans would resist, of course, but their primitive weapons could not penetrate Zephyrian shields. The plan was simple: disable their communication networks, neutralize their military command centers, force their leaders to surrender. The entire exercise was expected to last no more than 3 days. "All units, prepare for deployment," Krelvok announced to his squadron. Dr. Lisa Parker stared at the readings on her computer screen for the 3rd time. Something was interfering with the quantum field detectors at MIT. The patterns were unlike anything she had seen in 15 years of research. The energy signatures were too organized to be natural, too complex to be human technology. She picked up her phone and dialed her colleague at the Pentagon. "Bob, it's Lisa. I need you to check something for me." "What's up, Doc?" Bob's voice was tense. He worked in the Department of Defense's Science Division. "Are you running any classified experiments today? Something that might generate quantum field distortions?" "Negative. Why?" Lisa explained her readings. As she talked, she noticed the distortions were getting stronger. "Bob, I think something big is coming. Something not from Earth." In the Zephyrian Council chamber, the final vote was taken. 12 arms raised in approval. Commander Vextel smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "The training exercise is authorized. May our cadets learn well from this practice world." The command was transmitted instantly across space. On dozens of ships, young Zephyrian officers prepared their weapons and checked their equipment. They had studied human military tactics for months. They knew about their aircraft, their ground vehicles, their communication systems. Everything seemed straightforward. What they did not know was that Captain Jake Morrison was already moving his team into position, or that Dr. Lisa Parker was sending urgent messages to every scientist she knew, or that in military bases around the world, radar operators were reporting contacts that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The Zephyrians had spent years observing Earth. They had watched human wars, studied human strategies, analyzed human technology. They believed they understood everything about their chosen practice opponents, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had observed humans fighting other humans. They had never seen what happened when humans faced a threat from outside their world. General Patricia Hayes was in the middle of a briefing at the Pentagon when the first reports came in. Multiple radar contacts over major cities. No response to radio calls. Flight patterns unlike any known aircraft. "Sir," her aide whispered, "we're getting similar reports from every allied nation. London, Tokyo, Berlin, Moscow. They're all seeing the same thing. Patricia had been a soldier for 30 years. She had commanded troops in 3 different conflicts. She knew the difference between a drill and the real thing. This was real. Alert all units, she ordered. Full combat readiness, and get me the president on the phone. Above the atmosphere, Krelvog watched the blue planet grow larger as his ships descended. The mission briefing had been clear. Humans were emotional, but predictable. They would panic. At first, then organize a defense. Their leaders would try to negotiate. Eventually, they would surrender when they realized the hopelessness of their situation. It would be educational for the cadets. A chance to practice against live opponents. Without serious risk. The humans would provide exactly the right level of challenge for a graduation exercise. Beginning descent, Krelvog announced to his squadron. Remember, this is practice. Stay alert, follow procedures, and learn from every engagement. The ships began their final approach to Earth. In a few hours, the training exercise would begin. The Zephyrians were confident in their superior technology and careful planning. Earth was just a practice world, after all. But as the first alien ships entered Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. Instead of panic, human military. Units began moving with practiced precision. Instead of chaos, communication networks activated emergency protocols that had been prepared for decades. The Zephyrians had assumed that humans only fought other humans. They had never considered that humans might have spent centuries preparing for exactly this moment. They had never imagined that their chosen practice world might have been practicing too. The exercise was about to begin. But who would be the teacher and who would be the student remained to be seen. The legal office on New Geneva Station was not a place for romance. The walls were gray metal, the lights were too bright, and everything smelled like old coffee and stress. But Jake had never been more nervous in his life as he walked through. The door with Zarathic and Kethel, the clerk behind the counter was a heavy-set, human man named Pete Williams, who looked like he had been dealing with paperwork since before the galaxy was discovered. He had thick glasses, a permanent frown, and the attitude of someone who had seen every possible way that people could complicate their lives. "What can I do for you?" Pete asked without looking up from his computer screen. "We want to get married," Jake said. Pete's fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. He looked up, saw Jake standing next to an alien woman holding a sick child, and his frown deepened. "Human and alien marriage," Pete said slowly. "That's always complicated. You sure about this?" "We're sure," Jake replied. Pete sighed and pulled out a thick folder. "Okay, let's start with the basics. Names, citizenship status, current legal, standing." For the next hour, they filled out forms. Jake had to provide his work records, his medical history, his financial information, and a dozen other documents that proved he was who he said he was. Zarathic's paperwork was more complicated because she was technically a refugee with expired immigration status. "This is going to take some time to process," Pete warned them. Interspecies marriages require approval from 3 different departments. "Could be weeks." "We don't have weeks," Jake said. "Her son is dying." Pete looked at Kethel, who was unconscious in Zarathic's arms. Even someone who spent his days pushing papers could see that the child was in bad shape. "Emergency marriage. Authorization," Pete said thoughtfully. "It's possible, but it requires a medical certification that the delay will cause irreparable harm. Can we get that?" Jake asked. "Dr. Martinez would have to sign off on it. And you'd need to pay the emergency processing fee." "How much?" 500 credits, Jake winced. That was a big chunk of his savings, but it was better than losing Kethel while they waited for normal processing. "Do it," Jake said. They spent the rest of the morning running between different offices. Dr. Martinez signed the medical certification without hesitation, stating that Kethel had less than 72 hours without proper treatment. The immigration office stamped Zarathic's temporary status papers. The financial office processed Jake's payment by afternoon. They were back in Pete's office with all the required documents. Pete looked over everything twice, then shook his head. I have too. Ask, he said to Jake. Are you doing this under any kind of pressure? Threats, blackmail, anything like that? No, Jake said. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. And you understand that this is a legally binding marriage? All the rights and responsibilities that come with it? I understand. Pete turned to Zarathik. And you? Are you entering this marriage freely? Zarathik's translator buzzed as she spoke. Yes, Jake Morrison is a good man. I am honored to be his wife. Pete made a note in his computer. Okay then? By the authority granted to me by the New Geneva Station Charter and the Galactic Marriage Code, I pronounce you husband and wife. It was not the wedding Jake had imagined when he was younger. There were no flowers, no music, no friends or family watching. Just fluorescent lights and the sound of air recyclers humming in the background. But when Pete handed them their marriage certificate, Jake felt something shift inside him. He was no longer just Jake Morrison, cargo handler. He was Jake Morrison, husband and stepfather. He had a family again. Congratulations, Pete said, though he did not sound particularly happy about it. Your wife's citizenship status is now automatically updated. She have full medical benefits within 24 hours. What about Kethel? Jake asked. As your legal stepson, he's covered under your family plan immediately. Jake felt a weight lift off his shoulders. They had done it. Somehow against all odds, they had found a way to save Kethel. The news spread through the station faster than Jake had expected. By the time they left the legal office, people were already staring and whispering. Some looked curious, others looked disgusted. A few seemed impressed. Jake's supervisor, a gruff man named Tony Rodriguez, cornered him near the cargo bay that evening. Morrison, what the hell are you thinking? Tony demanded. Marrying some alien refugee? Have you lost your mind? I'm thinking about saving a child's life, Jake replied calmly. This is going to cause problems. The other workers are already talking. Some of them don't like the idea of aliens getting special treatment. They're not getting special treatment. They're getting the same rights as any other human family. Tony shook his head. You better hope this doesn't affect your work. I can't protect you if the crew decides they don't want to work with someone who's married to an alien. Jake had expected this kind of reaction. Humans like to think they were evolved and accepting, but many still had deep prejudices against other species. Some saw aliens as competitors for jobs and resources. Others simply fear what they did not understand, but Jake also received support from unexpected places. Captain Maria Santos, who commanded the cargo ship New Hope, approached him the next day. I heard about what you did, she said. That was brave. Just doing what needed to be done, Jake replied. My grandmother was a refugee too, back on Earth, Captain Santos said. Came from the old country with nothing but the clothes on her back. Someone helped her when she needed it most. Changed her whole life. She paused, looking thoughtful. I'm heading to the Titan Medical Complex next week. If your family needs transport, I can give you a ride. No charge. Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Captain, I thank you. Family helps family, she said simply. And you're all family. Now, Dr. Martinez was equally supportive. She fast-tracked Kethel's medical evaluation and personally coordinated with the specialists at Titan Medical Complex. I've seen a lot of desperate families come through here, she told Jake. Most people talk about helping, but very few actually. Do something. What you did, that takes real courage. I just hope it's enough to save him, Jake said. It will be. The doctors at Titan are the best in this sector. With proper treatment, Kethel should make a full recovery. Not everyone was supportive. Jake received anonymous messages calling him a traitor to his own species. Someone spray-painted alien lover on his apartment door. A group of dock workers, led by a man named Carl Bishop, made it clear they did not approve of Jake's decision. You're setting a dangerous precedent, Morrison, Bishop said during a break in the cargo bay. What happens when every alien on the station thinks they can find some desperate human to marry for citizenship? Then maybe some lives will be saved, Jake replied. And what about human lives? What about human families who need those medical resources? There's enough to go around if we stop acting like helping others somehow hurts us. Bishop spat on the ground near Jake's feet. You'll regret this, mark my words. But for every person who criticized Jake's decision, there seemed to be another who quietly supported it. The woman who ran the coffee shop started giving him free drinks. The maintenance chief, an old veteran named Sam Kelly, made sure Jake's requests for equipment repairs were processed quickly. What you did reminds me why I like humans, Sam told him. We're stubborn enough to help people, even when it doesn't. Makes sense. Jake spent his evenings with his new family, learning about Velthari culture and helping Zarathic navigate her new legal status. She was amazed by simple things like being able to open a bank account or register for language classes. I have forgotten what it felt like to exist officially, she told Jake through her improved translator. To be a person with rights instead of just someone taking up space. Kethel was still very sick, but knowing that treatment was coming had given him strength to hold on. He had even started responding to Jake's voice, turning his head when Jake spoke to him. He likes you, Zarathic observed one evening, as Jake sat reading to the child from a human children's book. How can you tell? His breathing becomes calmer when you are near. In Velthari culture, that means he feels safe. Jake looked down at the small alien child who was now legally his son. Kethel's eyes were closed, but his breathing was indeed steadier than it had been in days. I never thought I'd be a father, Jake said quietly. You are a good father already, Zarathic replied. Kethel is lucky to have you. The word father still felt strange to Jake, but not uncomfortable. It was like wearing new clothes that did not quite fit yet but might with time. 3 days. After their wedding, Captain Santos arrived to take them to Titan Medical Complex. Jake had arranged for leave from work, though he was not sure if he would still have a job when he got back. Tony had been non-committal about holding his position. As they boarded the New Hope, Jake looked back at New Geneva Station. It had been his home for 2 years, the place where he had tried to rebuild his life after Maya's death. Now he was leaving as a different person entirely, with a wife and child who needed him. Nervous? Captain Santos asked as the ship prepared. For departure. Terrified, Jake admitted. Good. That means you care. The day you stop being scared for your kids is the day you stop being a parent. Jake could not sleep. He lay in his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling of his small apartment, thinking about the law books he had been reading all day. The words kept running through his mind like a broken recording. Marriage to a human citizen. Grants immediate protected status and access to all medical benefits. It was 3 a.m, but Jake gave up trying to sleep. He got dressed and walked through the quiet corridors of the station. His feet carried him to the cargo bay where he worked, but he did not go inside. Instead, he found himself heading toward the main plaza. Zarathic was there, as he knew she would be. She never seemed to sleep anymore. She sat with her back against the wall, holding Kethel close to her chest. The child was so still that for a moment Jake's heart stopped, thinking the worst had happened. But then he saw the small rise and fall of the little one's breathing. Jake? Zarathic's translator crackled to life as she noticed him. Why are you here so late? Jake sat down beside her without answering. In the dim light of the plaza, Kethel looked like a broken doll. His skin had taken on a grayish color, and his breathing was so shallow it was barely visible. How is he? Jake asked. Worse, Zarathic said simply. Dr. Martinez says maybe 2 days. Maybe 3. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. 2 or 3 days. That was all the time they had left to find a miracle. I've been thinking, Jake said slowly, about what the ambassador said, about legal status. Zarathic turned to look at him. What do you mean? Jake took a deep breath. What he was about to say would change everything, and once the words were out, He could not take them back. "There's a law," he said. "A human law. If you marry a human citizen, you automatically get protected status. No sponsor needed. No 50,000 credits. Just ... marriage." Zarathik stared at him. "I do not understand. You want me to find a human man to marry?" "No," Jake said quietly. "I'm saying I would do it. I would marry you." The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Zarathik's plates had gone completely gray, and she held Kethel tighter. "You are not serious," she said finally. "I am," Jake replied. "I've been reading the law. All day, marriage will give you immediate citizenship rights. You could get medical care for Kethel. You could work, get proper housing, build a life. But marriage, in human culture, that means. It means whatever we decide it means," Jake said. "It doesn't have to be romantic. It could just be a legal arrangement, a way to save your son." Zarathik was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you do this? You barely know me. I am alien. I am broken. I have nothing to offer you." Jake thought about how to explain it. How could he tell her about the guilt he carried from not being able to save Maya? How could he explain that helping Zarathik and Kethel felt like a chance to make up for all the times he had failed before? "My wife used to say something," Jake said. "She said that family isn't about blood or DNA or even species. It's about choosing to care for someone when no one else will. Your wife sounds like a wise person." She was. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. I spent months in the hospital with her, watching her get weaker every day, knowing there was nothing I could do to help. Jake paused, surprised by how much it still hurt to talk about Maya. "I couldn't save her," he continued, "but maybe I can save Kethel. Maybe that's enough." Zarathik looked down at her son, then back at Jake. "This would ruin your life. Other humans would not understand. They would think you are crazy." "Let them think what they want," Jake said. "I'm not doing this for them. And after? When Kethel is better, what happens then?" Jake had thought about this too. Then you'll have citizenship. You can get a job, make your own life. We can get divorced if you want, or we can stay married for legal reasons. Whatever works best for you and Kethel. You would give up your freedom for a broken alien mother. "You're not broken," Jake said firmly. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. You've carried your son across the galaxy begging for help. From strangers, never giving up even when everyone told you it was hopeless. That's not broken. That's incredible." Zarathik's plates flickered with the faintest hint of blue light. "In Velthari culture, what you are suggesting would be ... very strange. We do not form family bonds with other species." "Good thing, Rear?" "Not on a Velthari world, then," Jake said. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Jake watched a few late-night travelers cross the plaza, wondering what they would think if they knew what he was considering. Marrying an alien, taking on the responsibility of a dying child, throwing away any chance of a normal life. But what was normal anyway? Jake had tried normal after Maya died. He had tried to go back to his old life, to pretend that losing her had not changed everything. It had not worked. He felt empty, purposeless, like he was just going through the motions of living without actually being alive. Maybe this was what he needed. Maybe helping Zarathik and Kethel was the thing that would make him feel human again. "There are complications," Jake said. "The marriage would have to be real, legally speaking. We have to live together, at least on paper. I'd be financially responsible for both of you. If Kethel needs expensive medical care, it would come out of my insurance, my savings, my future earnings." "That is too much to ask," Zarathik said. "I'm not asking. I'm offering." "Why?" Jake looked at Kethel, so small and fragile in his mother's arms. The child reminded him of every lost cause he had ever wanted to fight for, every underdog he had ever wanted to help. But more than that, He reminded Jake of the person Maya had wanted him to be. Because it's right, Jake said simply. Because a child shouldn't die just because his mother doesn't have the right paperwork. Because sometimes the universe puts impossible choices in front of us, and the measure of who we are is what we choose to do. Zarathik was crying. Jake had not known that Velthari could cry, but clear fluid was running down her face from her large, dark eyes. You would do this, she said. You would really do this. If you'll let me, I do not deserve such kindness. Nobody deserves kindness, Jake said. That's what makes it kindness instead of payment. Zarathik looked down at Kethel again. The child stirred slightly in his sleep, making a small sound that might have been pain or might have been a dream. If we do this, she said slowly, if we marry, what would happen to Kethel? In human law, would he be ... He'd be my stepson, Jake said. Legally, I'd have the same rights and responsibilities as if he were my biological child. You would be his father. The word hit Jake harder than he had expected. Father. He had never thought of himself as father material. He and Maya had talked about having children, but the cancer had taken that possibility away before they could try. Yeah, Jake said. I guess I would be. Zarathik was quiet for a long time. Jake could see her thinking, weighing options, trying to find another way. But they both knew there was no other way. Every door had been closed to them except this. 1. There is something you should know, Zarathik said finally. About Velthari marriage customs. What about them? Among my people, marriage is not just about two individuals. When you marry someone, you accept their family, their debts, their history. Everything they are becomes part of you. Okay, if you marry me by Velthari law, you would become Velthari yourself. Not biologically, but culturally. You would have the same status in our society that I have. Jake understood what she was saying. I'd be marked as broken too. Yes, other Velthari would treat you as they treat me, like you do not exist. Jake almost laughed. I can live with that. I'm not planning to spend much time in Velthari space anyway. You are sure? You understand what you would be giving up. Jake thought about it one more time. His quiet life, his simple job, his freedom. To walk away from complicated situations. His chance to find someone human to love. To have the normal family he and Maya had dreamed of. But when he looked at Kethel, struggling to breathe in his mother's arms, none of that seemed to matter. I'm sure, Jake said. The question is, are you willing to let me help you? Zarathik looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you, Jake Morrison. As the words hung in the air between them, Jake felt something shift inside his chest. It was not love, not yet, but it was something, purpose, maybe. Or hope that tomorrow they would go to the legal office and start the paperwork. Tomorrow, they would begin the process of becoming a family. Tonight, they would sit together by the fountain, watching over a sick child and planning for an impossible future. It was not the life Jake had expected to have, but maybe it was the life he was meant to live.